Oh, hello, life coaches. I am Seal, and this is my colleague Raul.
Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to this Facebook Live.
Thank you, Raul. So, today we're going to talk about how to handle triggers, and I'm pretty excited about the subject because it is a very basic piece of having a effective communication cycle and conversations just in life and living and with your one-on-one clients. So, the last two videos we did was all around triggers. And today we're going to talk about how to handle triggers, the definition of triggers. But first of all, before we do, if you're watching this live, please type in live in the comment section. And if you're watching as a replay, just type in replay. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions, life coaches. I want to know, have you ever experienced a situation in which you're mad about, and then you find out later on you're not really wasn't mad about the thing that you thought you was mad about. It was about something else. A lot of times it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on right now. So um, that's a great example of something being triggered. The other questions I have for you is, have you ever, I'm laughing because, oh my gosh, I've done this so many times. Have you ever said something that you looked back and you like regret it? And you're like, I don't know why I said that. That was the wrong thing to say. I would say probably at that moment when you did that, you were probably triggered and didn't realize you were triggered. And then, and then the last thing is, have you ever been so triggered, maybe you knew it or you didn't know it, and you couldn't even articulate your words. You couldn't even form the sentence. I mean, and that's pretty triggered, but I've been there, and I'm sure all of you have, and I'm sure you've had clients, well, that who have been there. So that represents being triggered. So Rahul, what are people wanting in the triggering area?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when that's not in, meaning the awareness, the understanding of that ability
Yeah.
just to know when you're triggered, then it's quite painful. I mean, relationships could be quite painful. Being in a conversation could be quite painful. And if you're a coach, and if you're coaching a client and they're triggered, that session might be painful. So obviously we don't want that, right? So the first thing we want is our clients and also ourselves, just with this awareness, just to be able to spot triggers. That's the first thing, both ways, right? You want to be able, as a coach, you really want to know and spot when there's a trigger there with your client, but also with yourself, right? I mean, if we're coaching people, from time to time, we could get triggered as well, right? So it's okay. It's very important ability just to spot when a trigger is happening. It doesn't matter if it's with your client or if it's with yourself. So the first
Mm-hmm.
thing you really want as a coach is to have that ability to spot triggers. Then the other thing is, when you're working with your client, you really want to help them. It's not that you see what it's happening. That's just the first step. But really, the thing that you want as a coach is to help your client, right? To help them to be aware of what's actually happening, right? It's not you telling them, hey, you're triggered. No, right? It's not, hey, you look triggered. No, that's not the way to do it. But what you want is for them to actually be aware, to spot that by themselves. Oh, that's kind of a trigger. So that's very, very important. It's not you telling them, it's helping them to realize that by themselves. And then the other thing, which is quite important, is by doing this and helping your clients and obviously helping yourself, you really want to have them in present time, right? You don't want them trapped in the past or any other place. So that's what I would say. That's why it's really, really important to have this ability.
Thank you. So let's talk about what is a trigger. So, and I'm taking this definition out of the Knowledgeism Dictionary, which is written by Alan Walter. So, a trigger is a present time reminder of something from the past. The trigger causes the past incident to begin to play. Triggers mean that something previous in time that is similar to what is going on now and contains highly upsetting energy has been activated, and guess what, is controlling your or the client's behavior. So that is what a trigger is. I bet you there's a lot of pictures and a lot of incidents coming to view when things have happened in present time and an incident starts to play that's reminding you of something that happened way back then. So that's the first point we want to make today. The second point is, how can you tell if a person's triggered? Well, here's some key points. First of all, you can observe their mood level. When you're talking to them, did their mood level shift, or it may have just completely exploded? Obviously, there's a trigger. The other thing is, where is their attention? What did they put their attention on? Where did they go? And then a really, really big key one is their attention here in the now and looking at futures, or is it back there stuck in the past? So that's another key piece on triggers, and if someone's triggered, if you just remember those three things, that will help you spot it like right there on the spot. You want to be able, as Raul said, to be able to coach your clients and have them in present time. You don't want their attention back there. Okay, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Seal. And the other thing that I would say on triggers is sometimes triggers are very subtle. You know, sometimes, so you just as a coach, you just have to be aware of that, because anything has the potential to trigger something in someone. Sometimes it's just, you know, smell. Sometimes it's just the scenery. Sometimes it's a look. Sometimes it's the mood level you're talking to. Sometimes it's laughter. Sometimes, you know, so just be aware of that. Anything has the potential to trigger something from the past, right? And make it to replay in present time. So just as a coach, just be aware that the triggers, you know, are quite subtle. And that's why those keys that Seal just mentioned, I mean, those are golden nuggets. I mean, you just watch the mood level. You know, just watch it and how they're talking. So that's very, very valuable. So thank you for sharing that, Seal. And the other thing that I would say is very important to have this ability to handle triggers and spot triggers, because what you really want as a coach is to create a safe space, right? I mean, you would be so successful as a coach if you actually handle triggers the moment they manifest, not wait on that. If it's manifesting, just handle it. And then if you do that, then your client is going to really trust you. Because really what you want in a coaching session, you really want that space in which your client is just, I mean, he knows or she knows that they can talk to you about anything, anytime. That's really what you want. And then if you develop that ability of creating that such a safe space, oh my God, you're just going to be so successful in this industry. So that's what I would say. And remember, Seal mentioned about this document, we created that worksheet. So we created a worksheet with all these main points that we have shared with you. So if you're interested in having that worksheet, just type in the comments section, trigger. So that's what I would say on that. So back to you, Seal.
Thank you so much. So let me just share a short story with you that happened where I used basically some of the trigger questions in my own situation so I could figure out what on earth was triggering me. So in the 9th grade, I took a speech class in high school because I wasn't doing well in the rest of the subjects. I didn't do well in math. I was really struggling in history and so forth. And so I took speech, not knowing, I mean, this talk about having a blonde moment, not knowing that I would actually have to get up and speak in front of the class, which I refused to do after the first time and just told the teacher that I wasn't going to do this. I was never going to speak in front of people. Uh, and I got a D, barely got out of the class by doing extra credit. So, but anyway, when I fell in love with, when I got into this subject, at the age of 40, and I just fell in love with what I was learning. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And so I also realized, oh, you're going to need to teach. And so I was terrified of it, absolutely terrified. I mean, public speaking was what I feared more than death. So um, I started out with two people, and it's one thing that I learned, to always do things on the right gradient, because if you do things on the right gradient, instead of me trying to talk to 5,000 people, I started out with two. And once I saw that, I gradiently increased. So I went from 2 to 5. Then I flew to Atlanta and talked to 17. And then I came back to Texas and did 50 in Austin. And then I was offered, an opportunity to come to Canada and actually share the stage with Kim Kiyosaki and a lot of other really successful, accomplished women. And I will tell you, I was terrified, but I had promised myself that if I ever got an opportunity to share what I was learning, because I had learned a lot by then, that I wouldn't refuse the opportunity. So I was trying to walk the talk, but I was terrified. I mean, I would get physically sick. I would get so nervous before getting up and speaking to people. So what I did was I started asking myself a question: what am I afraid that will happen? Because there was a huge amount of fear. What am I afraid is going to happen when I'm up there? And it took me a bit. I kept asking myself over and over. And finally, I nailed it. It was basically being afraid that somebody would ask me something, a question from the audience that I didn't know, because I knew I was going to let different people get up and share in the audience as I was teaching. And so I was terrified that somebody would ask me something I didn't know, and then I couldn't answer the question. So I worked out how I could handle it, which was basically just be honest and tell them that, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sitting right over there at the table. And during intermission, if you will, come over. And if I hadn't found the answer, I'll take your name and I'll take your phone number, email address. And when I get back to Texas to my office, I'll give you a call, I'll give you the answer. So, that removed all that fear because I had a handle for it. The second thing, there was still something else behind that. And the second thing was, so I asked myself, okay, so if you don't know the answer to the question, what are you afraid of? There's still a little bit of fear left. And basically it was that I would look stupid. And I knew what that was going back to. I was going back to school. All the way back to school. And I even did I had to get up in front of my first audience when I was in kindergarten and on stage in front of all these parents. And I had all those eyes looking at me, and I had to recite a poem, and I just couldn't do it. I mean, I said the first two lines and forgot. So, but it was the fear of looking stupid. So once I identified that, I got up on that stage and, just knocked it out of the park for me. And now I have been able to speak up to, I mean, I don't really have a number, but I think I've spoken to 2,000 or 3,000 people at a time. But identifying that fear and that trigger, because see, I wasn't on stage anymore. I was back in school. I was back in all those incidents. So that's a handle on how I handled my fear, how I handled the trigger, the questions I asked myself, and hopefully you'll take that and use it in your life with your clients and just living life and conversation to create a really successful winning environment for yourself and those you love. And that's it.